As a result, we began to export to the Marshall Islands all of the foodstuffs that people ate on a day-to-day basis. And it wasn't the best foodstuffs. I mean, this was back in the mid to late 40s. This is when people believed that processing and new food engineering and new packaging and ways of preserving foods and creating new chemicals was going to save the world. Many people still believe that. As a result, here's the kind of foods that were imported into the Marshall Islands. White rice, sugary drinks, sodas, popsicles, Spam. I mean, you could not hardly have imagined a worse diet for a people to eat. Yet these people, not knowing that there was any difference between this so-called food and the food they used to eat as native people, embraced it wholeheartedly. What happened? They went from one of the healthiest populations in the world in 40 years to the most diseased. Obesity rates off the charts, diabetes rates approaching 30%, triglycerides, cholesterol, all of the things we see in this country right off the scale. Now, here's what happened. It's called the Marshall Islands Intervention Study. Intervention study means we're going to go in and intervene, and we're going to change a factor in the experiment and see what effect it has. What the change was, or the intervention was, we took a handful of those people, we pulled them out of that typical Western lifestyle that they'd been living, they and their parents, and we reestablished them in a native diet. Started eating all the same foods that they'd eaten traditionally. Initiated an exercise program to bring them back up to the physical activity level of their forefathers. And the outcome, the effect of these changes were immediate and dramatic. Fasting blood glucose dropped by over 75% or 75 points in 2 weeks, almost back to normal. Triglycerides, cholesterol, everything started coming back into normal. That progress continues to this day because this study is still ongoing. All right. I hope by now some life-changing information is starting to take hold in your head. I hope you're beginning to see that there is indeed some hope here, that there's something you can do. How do we know diabetes is man-made? How do we know it's reversible? How do we know diabetes is not a real disease? And so basically, how do we know these things that I've just told you? I mean, am I just telling you these things for my health? No. We know that these myths are myths because they are disproven in the scientific literature. The studies are there. Look at them. There's no credible scientific literature that ties lower levels of blood cholesterol to a higher level of health. So what in the world is lowering cholesterol become such an important goal for? And even then, people are going about it in the wrong way. It's supported by personal experience. We know these things are myths because, like the people that I talk to when they make the changes that their doctors and dietitians recommend, their glucometers tell them that something is wrong because the situation is not improving, it's getting worse. So it's supported by personal experience. Look, it's like the movie Tucker. If you saw that movie, they're in the lawsuit fighting for their life, and the judge is saying, no, you're going to lose everything because you didn't fulfill your contract. You didn't make any cars. And little did they know, the jury and everybody didn't know, they had 40 some odd of these Tuckers that they'd made driving up and down the street outside of the courthouse. And the attorney who was representing Tucker simply said, look, you will believe it. All you have to do is look out the window. But they wouldn't look out the window. Much the same way. Look, all you have to do is look at your own personal experience and you'll see that this is proven correct. And it's supported by logical deduction. Very important. We first establish a comparison. What does that mean? Well, it simply means this. Is it possible that there are populations of people in this world that have a healthy lifestyle? I mean, we know we don't, but if nobody on the planet has a healthy lifestyle, how do we know that there's any way out? Well, but there is. There are populations, there are societies, native populations all over the world that exhibit almost perfect health, literally Garden of Eden stuff. So we know, in this comparison, we know that it is possible to live a lifestyle and be healthy. So that's our first clue. And then we establish a deviation from that standard. What happens when you take one of these Garden of Eden cultures, so to speak, and you subject them to the same lifestyle conditions which we experience? Well, we saw what happened. Within 40 years, their Health was destroyed, the same thing that happens to us. So now we have a deviation from the standard being health. And we've got a good idea what caused it. Well, just to be sure of what caused it, what happens when we take that variable and we establish a return to the standard? In other words, we take them back to their native culture, their diet, their activity. And we saw what happened in the Marshall Islands. They regained their health. Now, this is pretty incredible stuff. About now, I hope you're wondering how you ever believed all the nonsense you've been told about diabetes. I know it's easy just to keep going along, doing what everybody else is doing. But at some point, if you want to save your life, you've got to open your eyes and see the evidence right there in front of you. You can change diabetes. Decide in your mind right now. As I said earlier, the battle for your life will largely be won or lost in your mind. And this is a battle for your life. Don't poo-poo this. If you change nothing and you decide to stay on the runaway freight train, you will ride it right to its end, just like most people in this country and the world that have diabetes. Diabetes is much more psychological than physical. You've got to have the wherewithal to get off the train. You can win this battle. Thousands have. And you can too. All right. What are the specifics? What are the magic factors that can take you from 50 fat and defeated to 50 fabulous and ready to live life? It can happen. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. And in my conversations over the last 12 years, I've brought together 12 recommendations, 6 do's and 6 don'ts for diabetics. And if you make these changes, and if you are what I call a traditional type 2 diabetic, not a diabetic that's got some autoimmune factors involved, a so-called 1.5, type 1.5 diabetic. No, if you're traditional type 2, like most diabetics are, these 12 recommendations will save your life. So let's take a look at what they are. First one's pretty basic. Don't drink soda, regular diet, ever again for the rest of your life, if you're still drinking it. I am amazed constantly at the ignorance about diabetes amongst those very people that have it. I don't want that to be you. Now, this is common sense. We know that soda is not healthy for us. We just know that innately. I don't know how you can not know that. So if you're still drinking soda, regular or diet, you've got to stop that. Don't ever drink another soda for the rest of your life. Look, over here. Sugar consumption in the United States per capita is now over 160 pounds per year. Are you kidding me? Our bodies can't handle that. They're not designed to handle that. Paleolithic diet has been with human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. Sugar has only been introduced into the human diet in the last 150 to 200 years. And look what happens when we eat sugar. Look it up in this chart. Here's the years, 1700 through 2000. Here's the general obesity rate. And look what starts to happen around about mid part of the 19th century. Look what begins to happen. And oh, look what happens here about 1900. This is the introduction of sugar. And this is the amount of sugar consumed, kilograms per year. And this is what happens. So there's the increased sugar consumption, and there's the obesity rate, hand in hand. Remember insulin, fat storage hormone, all of those things we talked about? It shows up. You remember we talked about how we know this? It's there because of the broad-based numbers. We know it happens over broad-based societies, and you see it right here. Look, there is no arguing the things we're talking about here today. The only question is, are you going to allow yourself to believe it? Bring back your control, bring back your personal power, and allow that to help you make the decisions you've got to make if you want to save your life. Okay, let's keep going. Number 2, don't eat the simple sugars. Look, another one, common sense. The cookies, candies, cakes, ice cream, honey, molasses, maple syrup. There's no place for these things in a diabetic's diet, so stop eating it. No, I'm not saying cut down and eat in moderation like the American Diabetes Association will tell you. That's nonsense. Diabetics cannot properly metabolize glucose. Why in the world would you eat anything that drives your glucose higher if we know that's going to cause damage in your body? Look, get past this nonsense and just cut sugar out of your diet. All right, number 3. No fried or deep fried foods ever again for the rest of your life. That means no French fries, no chicken McNuggets, nothing. If it has touched a fry pan or deep fried fatty oil, it should never enter your mouth. Now, there's reasons for this that I'm not going to spend time with today. But basically, what happens when oils, whether they're plant or animal-based, are heated beyond a certain point, we call it the smoke point, the molecular structure of that oil is denatured. It's modified, and it loses its natural shape and structure and becomes what we call a trans fat. And those are terribly damaging. The food that is the single biggest source of trans fats in the American diet, guess what it is? Well, it's not hard to figure out. It's French fries. People say, oh, Ken, that's easy for you to say. You don't have diabetes. Well, I don't. I know way too much about diabetes to ever allow that to occur. But I'll tell you this, I haven't had a French fry in so many years, I can't remember when it was. I haven't had any soda pop for so many years, I can't count them. As I said earlier, these things are simple. They may not be easy, but they're simple. It's not rocket science. Number 4, don't drink any more milk or fruit juice. Milk is loaded with lactose. Plus, it's just a terrible food. I'm not referring to milk in the sense that some people might be, where you might find a farmer with some ancient breeds of cattle, say Guernsey, Brown Swiss, Jersey, that's pasturing without any grain in the diet, and there's no growth hormones, there's no antibiotics. The milk is not pasteurized or homogenized. Now that's almost a health food. But I'm talking about the stuff you buy in the grocery store that we call milk. That's horrible stuff. Don't drink it. Fruit juice, almost 100% sugar. That's a no-brainer. Don't drink it. Let your body recover.